The evil business of Nestle. Nestle is one of the most boycotted and hated companies in the entire world, and it's for good reason. Nestle claims to be a company that supports good life with good food, but you'd be surprised just how far away that is from the truth. In this video, we'll be outlining Nestle's fall from grace along with all the sins that Nestle has committed. Stick around until the end of the video to see just how Nestle has managed to get away with it all. Believe it or not, the Nestle company was actually built on a noble cause. Swiss chemist Henri Nestle and his wife were constantly worried about the nourishment of infants around them. Not every mother could produce breast milk, and those who couldn't had no alternative. This was the very situation that Henri Nestle's neighbor encountered, and upon seeing his neighbor's malnourished child, Henri knew he had to take action. After months of research, Henri Nestle finally perfected his baby milk formula and started the Nestle company so he could distribute his formula further than just his neighbor. Many mothers breathed a sigh of relief, but Henri wanted more. Henri wanted to help mothers around the world, and so in 1905, he merged with the Anglo-Swiss Condensed Milk Company to help widen not only his reach, but also his product line. A few years later, in 1938, Nestle would introduce its second breakout product, Nescafé Instant Coffee. Instant coffee was an instant hit among the masses and further catapulted the brand to star status. But it's also here that Nestle's history would start turning as black as Nescafé's coffee. Controversy upon controversy began to pile on top of the Nestle company due to questionable business processes, all of which were motivated by every company's bottom line: profit. Nestle had lost their original vision of nurturing customers, which ultimately earned them their most soured title, the Baby Killer. In 1974, a detailed research paper entitled The Baby Killer was released to the public. This research paper would put a direct spotlight on Nestle's questionable business practices and how it has all secretly been killing countless children. It's no secret that formula milk is not as healthy as natural breast milk. In fact, it should be common sense that something made in a lab will never be as good as the real thing. This wasn't what Nestle was selling at all. Nestle planned to turn this fact upside down, marketing their powdered milk formula as better than the real thing. Now, normally, a false advertisement is something we encounter every day, but it's how Nestle did it that's the most sinister. Nestle would hire fake nurses and scientists to peddle their formula directly to households and maternity wards, offering free samples to parents with the promise of a more nutritious life for their children. Now, free samples might sound generous, but this was sadly another power move. Nestle's powdered milk formula lasted just long enough for the mothers themselves to stop producing milk, leaving mothers with no other choice but to keep buying Nestle's milk formula. And if you thought that was sinister, the effects were way more extreme in third world countries. The marketing process was the same: to get households hooked on the product until they had no choice but to buy more formula. The only problem was not every household could afford to buy formula, and not every household had access to the clean water needed to activate the formula. Lower income households, now with no access to breast milk and formula, are left with no choice but to water down the formula to the point where there was close to no nutrition. Households with no clean water ended up using contaminated water as well. Nestle's marketing scheme has led to the death of multiple children around the world by way of malnutrition or poisoning. Eventually, UNICEF had to step in and lay out strict guidelines about marketing milk, and thank goodness for that. But sadly, Nestle doesn't stop at milk. Nestle has a diversified portfolio of over 2,000 brands under its belt, and most of them revolve around bottled water. Brands such as Nestle Pure Life, Arrowhead, Perrier, and even San Pellegrino are only a few of these drinking water brands, and most of them you've probably encountered. Nestle sources its bottled water from various natural springs and groundwater sources, taking away natural drinkable water at close to zero cost. Couple this with the fact that it took Nestle over a decade to realize that their water extraction permit had expired. during which billions of liters were extracted from nature. So much so that multiple scientists argue that this can lead to adverse effects on local ecosystems, water availability for communities, and the overall sustainability of water resources. But of course, Nestle being Nestle will continue to bribe and pay scientists to refute these facts, as they've done before. Nestle has also caught a lot of flack for extracting large volumes of water from local sources, particularly in areas where water scarcity is a significant issue. Instead of water being readily available for those who need it, Nestle takes the water away, processes it in one of their heavy CO2 emission factories, and then sells it to the public for quadruple the price. Most of what you're paying for when you buy a Nestle brand bottled water is the bottling process itself, and sadly, you aren't just paying in money. The entire bottling process puts a heavy toll on the environment, with Nestle being the third biggest contributor to plastic waste in the world. From here, it's easy to frame Nestle as a company that has no regard for the environment. You wouldn't really expect anything less from a company whose CEO believes that humans don't have the basic right to access clean water for free. But this isn't Nestle's first rodeo when it comes to human rights. Perhaps the most common human rights violation that these big companies have is child labor, and Nestle is no different. Aside from milk and water, Nestle also deals a lot in the chocolate and coffee business. Being distributors of huge chocolate brands such as Kit Kat, Smarties, and Aero means that Nestle had to source massive amounts of cocoa to meet the demands of these huge brands. Of course, Nestle, being the money-grubbing corporate giant that it is, kept an eye out for cheap labor to lower the cost of manufacturing. Unsurprisingly, there is no cheaper labor cost than that of children desperate to make a living. Less costs mean more money in their pocket, right?
Congratulations,
Nestle.
Hello, I like money.
This grim reality came to the forefront during the late 1990s and early 2000s when reports emerged linking Nestle's cocoa suppliers to instances of child exploitation, including forced labor and trafficking. The revelation of child labor within Nestle's supply chain sparked outrage among consumers, activists, and ethical advocates worldwide. Multiple boycotts and protests were held all over the world to bring attention to Nestle's questionable business practices, and Nestle had to answer back. The company's initial response to these allegations was met with criticism, simply saying that these children are working to support their hard-working fathers and mothers, and that no child was forced to work for their farms. This response was obviously not enough, because nothing can excuse child labor. Customers wanted more, demanding accountability from Nestle, and thankfully, Nestle finally listened. But as kind as the initiatives may be, there's no denying that Nestle's image has been changed by these controversies forever. So now that Nestle has bared its sharp fangs at us and shown its greasy, money-grubbing hands, why on earth is it still operating? The answer is quite simple, really. It's because they've already won. There's no doubt that Nestle was built with a noble goal, but at some point that noble goal went straight out the window, and we were too blind to see it. But thankfully, Nestle has been working hard to redeem their brand after these controversies. Following the UNICEF mandate, Nestle's marketing has been much more responsible and supportive of natural breast milk. Nestle's Caring for Water program was established as a global initiative that aims to protect and manage water resources in collaboration with local communities. Nestle has also gone on to start the Nestle Cocoa Plan, which aims to improve the lives of cocoa farmers and their communities, addressing issues such as child labor and poor working conditions. But all of these solutions that Nestle has thought up, whether they be long-term changes or not, is still up for questioning. Only time will tell if Nestle has really turned a new leaf, but let's face it, Nestle really should have been outed on their third strike out controversy.